Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Rose Berry. She's a social anxiety coach and she's based in London, England. Can you say hi, Rose?
Hi.
I'm so glad that you're on. You have a great backstory, and I wanted to hear your story as to why you started doing this, the social anxiety. And a lot has happened with everybody. It doesn't matter where you live, what happened with this COVID pandemic. Can you tell me what made you want to jump into being a social anxiety coach?
Yeah, of course. It is very interesting timing that this is when I set up my business, because I actually discovered I had social anxiety many years ago. And the reason why I set up this business is because I actually didn't know that I had it. All
Oh,
I knew was that I was really struggling. And so it started when I moved school at the age of 16. And I moved to a school that was really small to one that was really big. And having been very confident at my old school, able to speak to lots of people, had what I thought were a nice amount of friends, I found myself in a position where I was really nervous about meeting people and like really terrified. And it wasn't just a kind of, oh, I'm a bit nervous. It was, what are they going to think? Oh, I said the wrong thing. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. What are they going to think of me? And it was so such a strong feeling and so many strong thoughts that I ended up avoiding lots of social situations because I found myself in a situation where I thought, wow, I don't want to be here right now. This is so unpleasant. And it was also showing up with public speaking. And this was kind of the main thing for me, which was that I moved to this school because they had a really good drama department. And at the time, I thought I wanted to be an actress. And
right.
when I started this school, I realized I had developed the worst stage fright. And so I went into my first class, and because I was new and there were other new people, they said, I want you to go around the room and introduce yourself. And this became a real trigger for me because in that moment I thought, no, I'm going to have to speak in front of these people. What am I going to say? What's my name? It was this real panic of what am I going to do? And I was looking at the door and thinking about how I could escape and avoid having to introduce myself. And I realized that I couldn't, because at some point they would introduce me. I was going to be at the school for 2 years. So I ended up saying my name, introducing myself, and rather than feeling relieved when it was over, I actually felt really ashamed. I felt really embarrassed and humiliated. And other students in the class kind of picked up on my behavior because I was visibly very uncomfortable.
Mm.
And then obviously because I was doing drama as well, I was constantly being asked to perform and having to be in plays and things like that. And I was asked to give presentations, and all of these things just became too much for me. And I felt really, really depressed. And I started feeling depressed as soon as I started this school. And I never knew why. And I went to the doctors and I kept saying, I really don't feel good. This thing keeps happening to me where I get really nervous. My heart beats really fast. I feel like I can't speak. And they didn't really know what it was. So they just said, look, take some antidepressants. And each time I said no, because I said, I want to find out what is causing this.
Right.
I need to know why I'm suddenly like this when I wasn't like this before. And it wasn't until I went to university about 5 years later where things got really bad, because I was being asked to give these presentations and constantly being asked to introduce myself to these rooms of people and thinking about applying for jobs and thinking about my future and really wondering, what is my future going to look like if this is how things are right now? If I'm going to constantly be nervous about introducing myself to people, if I'm going to be constantly worrying about having to speak in front of others, like I know that public speaking is going to be a thing that comes up in my life a lot, and I want to be able to handle it. And above all else, deep down, I am actually such a people person and I love meeting people. And I think that was the thing that was really bothering me, was that I knew I had it within me to form these amazing connections, and I was just so afraid to do it. Um, so it was when I got to university that it really felt like it was just limiting me so much. I was so unhappy. I thought, how am I going to live my life this way? And I ended up going to a doctor again because I had one particular experience where this teacher asked me to speak in front of the class. And he asked me to talk about a poem that we were reading. And I just didn't have an answer for it. I just completely panicked and my mind went blank. I didn't know what I was going to say about this poem. So I just said to him, look, I agree with what that person said. And he kind of just kept prodding me, going, come on, Rose, don't you have your own opinion? And I kept saying no, but he wouldn't let that go. So he kept pushing me. And that was at the point when I thought, you know, I ended up avoiding his seminars for the following 4 weeks before I realized I've paid thousands of pounds for this degree. I cannot let this go to waste because of what's going on with me. So I went to the doctors. I explained what was going on. I said, look, I need an answer. This has been going on for years. And she said, it sounds like you've got social anxiety. And I remember just hearing it and thinking, social anxiety, is that what this is? And I said, but is that what this fear of public speaking is about? Is that really social anxiety? And she said, well, it's a form of social anxiety. And then I sort of looked back and thought, well, it wasn't just the public speaking, it was the starting the new school, it was the speaking to people, it was even one day going into the hairdressers and really struggling to book an appointment there. And so I realized, yeah, that is what it is. And basically in that moment, more or less, my 5-year battle with depression completely went away. In a second, my depression was gone. And I thought, how is this possible that I have had this thing for 5 years and all I needed was to be told that I had social anxiety and that would get rid of it. And what I identified was that it wasn't just the social anxiety, it was just discovering that I wasn't alone and that what I had was something that other people were experiencing, and therefore there was a way out of it. I wasn't going to be stuck with this thing forever. And so I became really passionate about social anxiety, not only because it was something that I was experiencing severely, but because I felt like it was something people just didn't really know about and that people didn't talk about. Because if I'd have spoken to several doctors and they didn't know what it was, then there's something missing here. And so I really wanted to raise awareness around it and share my experience and help others who were going through it.
So the original doctors you had talked about, were they psychologists? I was just curious, or were they just regular primary physicians, you know?
Yeah, just GPs. You know, I first developed depression when I was 16. So I didn't really know what my options were. And back then we weren't talking about mental health in the same way that we do today. I didn't have an Instagram that I could look at someone's Instagram and go, oh, they've got it too. I really thought, this is it, I'm on my own.
Right. And so this doctor helped validate, and that's kind of good. You found that you weren't alone and you weren't that unique. I mean, anyway, it happens. You were telling the story about when you were younger. I do remember I felt that way sometimes too, in high school, definitely. And they were putting me up, talk to people. I'm like, I'm a people person, like you said, but it mortified me. I just was like really nervous. And one time I remember, this is probably too much, I had to go back, I had to leave. I had to go to the bathroom because I was so nervous about it. I don't know if that ever happened to you.
Oh, well, I mean, the number of times, the problem was I had this dialogue that said, if you go and leave the room, when you come back in, you're going to be really put on the spot. So I was actually worried that if I left and came back, it would be an even worse scenario.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's why I didn't do it. But the number of times I experienced that, I can't tell you. It was
right. Well, mine, I had to go because I would have had it, it was that bad. And it was obviously, like you're saying, some anxiety that I didn't realize. But is it more common, you think, in girls than boys? I was just, since you're coaching, I didn't know if it was, does it matter?
I haven't been able to identify whether it's more in one or the other.
Mhm.
And the problem is, one of the reasons why it's hard to identify is that a lot of people put on a brave face when it comes to social anxiety. And we all, generally speaking, a lot of people try to cover it up because we really have had it instilled in us that we need to be confident to get ahead, and
Yes.
we need to fake it to make it and all this kind of stuff. And when you're actually struggling with this social anxiety, it's so hard to fake it and put on a confident face. So, it's a really interesting question. And I wouldn't say I've done enough to notice, or that maybe at the moment, my marketing has been slightly more directed to women, perhaps. I don't really know, actually. I don't know how to answer that yet.
I think maybe women are more open to expressing that they've dealt with it rather than a guy, because guys have this tough persona. They're taught, at least in my generation, they have to be tough. Like you said, fake it till you make it. And that's what I was involved in sports, and like, you could do this, you're good. it pushed me out there, and I didn't realize, like, I didn't, because you were saying that maybe it brought back these memories, but I was, really glad that I had good coaches to support me.
Mm.
Like you said, nobody ever really talked about mental health back then. It was a no-no, right? Seen as a
Mhm.
thing. And I don't know why that is, why they make you feel bad about that makes you feel worse if you are dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was really what was at the core of my struggle, was this battle with shame. I
Yeah.
felt so ashamed that I had depression because I thought there was something wrong with me, and especially when I was at uni, and there was this idea that university is meant to be really fun and you make loads of friends. And so when I got to university and I felt really low and was struggling to make friends, and I had these people around me saying, Rose, aren't you just loving university? I thought there's something really wrong with me. And so there was this real stigma around it,
Mhm.
around health.
And it's
Yeah.
definitely, I think the positive side of social media is that people are sharing. So you're seeing not alone, right? That's what I see, positive aspect of it.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking is, gosh, forgot my thought already. So it is a something that you're helping other people deal with, and you mentioned the brave face that people put on. Do you think that can affect your stress levels in your body? If you're, what I'm saying, holding it inside, maybe.
I definitely think so, in terms of when I was feeling really afraid, I was in this constant stress response.
Ah,
And it's something that I still contend with now, because I put myself through that stress for so long. When you're hiding behind a brave face, if you're really sitting in that fear, covering up what's going on, and you're dealing with that in silence, then that can really impact you. It really leaves you with this feeling of, like I said, shame, and just that, when we experience fear, when we really should, if something bad is happening to us, then our body gets prepared for it. All this stuff happens, like our digestive system shuts down. So if we're in that state constantly, then that can make us really sick. And I believe that that's why a lot of people are physically unwell, because of
right.
what's going on in their mind.
There's a definite correlation between your mental health and your physical health. And I believe in just trying to, mindfulness is important, but I feel like yoga, just do certain things. I don't do it for like 30 minutes, but it helps based on the situation. We all have, dealing with stress is normal, right? But then
Yeah.
I think it turns into like chronic stress, and hiding behind a brave face is not going to help you long term. And I think what you're offering, I didn't know there was like a social anxiety coach, you know, title out there, which I think is great. And it's so important to share your story with other people, because that makes you more trusted.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And coaching is such a great industry, and there are lots of people, training to be a coach, and I qualified as a health and life coach, and then because of my experience, I was able to really carve out this niche, which is so important to me and something I'm so passionate about. So yeah, thank you.
The reason I brought up stress is I've dealt with like some corporate speaking and reducing stress, because employees are pretty stressed. And I imagine now, that was prior to 2020, right? And it's if I ever did it again, I'd have to change it a little bit. But I think that is a thing I've noticed more employers, I don't know how it is in the UK, are offering stress management, things like that for the employees.
Yeah, definitely. I think, in many cases, there's an expectation for a lot of organizations to now make sure that
Yes.
they are prioritizing staff mental health. So it's definitely this box that needs to be ticked. And then there are also people who are really experiencing their own struggles and are realizing, oh, we can talk about it. We don't have to hide what we're going through. And it's especially being highlighted, the importance for leaders to do that, for leaders to show their vulnerability, and the power of a CEO sharing with his employees or her employees that they've been struggling with their mental health. I mean, that's really powerful, and it creates this incredible connection and camaraderie. So yeah, I'm so glad that more workplaces are thinking about it. And with my business, I really want to encourage them to think more and more about social anxiety and what it's like for an employee that's having to speak up in a meeting, or having to give a presentation, or having to interact with their co-workers, because often there's this this assumption that it's really important to integrate with your team, and it's, speak up in a meeting so that you're contributing and all this kind of stuff. But actually, for some people, there is the struggle with speaking up. There's a struggle with, or maybe someone is just better at listening and taking in what's going on around them. And not everyone wants to, joke with the team. And it's okay if they don't. It doesn't mean that they're not a part of the team, but everyone's got their own personality, their own way of being. And if we make it this one size fits all, then it actually is very divisive and not so inclusive.
Right. And I just think it's like, it's just so good that employers are trying to help. And I like the idea of the leaders being more vulnerable. That opens up more trust. And another thing I was thinking of as you're talking, do you think because of COVID, people having to I should say stay at home, I'm not sure what you call it in the UK, shelter at home, you think that's going to increase social anxiety? I think that's going to have probably affect it, increase it a little bit. That's me.
Do you mean people working from home?
Right. Do you think them going out in social environments, you think that will increase social anxiety possibly?
I do think we are going to see a huge increase in social anxiety, yeah, for multiple reasons. If I was going through what I was going through now, all of this would have been an opportunity for me to avoid my problem, for me to not have to face it, which meant that I would come out of this lockdown maybe even worse than I was before, because I wasn't able to take this on. So I think that's one element. There are going to be some people who I believe for a long, long time will always, because of the mask, be wary of people who aren't wearing one. As more and more people stop wearing them, I think there will be this slight, division between those that are still thinking, oh, this thing is around, I need to avoid that person, and those who are like, come on, the virus has passed, let's just hang out again. And that kind of affection and human interaction. And yeah, just the fact that people have been at home for so long, not interacting with strangers, and so many people struggle with that anyway, that to have had all this time not practicing that, there's no doubt that there'll be some impact there.
I think so too. And you admit, I'm a people person. I like to hug people, and it's been hard for me when you're out. And I just got my first vaccine shot on Monday, but I was visiting for the client, someone I've dealt with a long time, went to their office last week for the first time, and he was introducing me to some new people. And this guy put his hand out, and I hesitated to shake his hand, and that's not me. But I went ahead and did it. And then later, went to the bathroom, washed my hands. But I mean, isn't that just weird how that anxiety, I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, I was scared to shake this, right? But that's not how I was before. But I did client, but isn't that just weird how this, so if I'm dealing with it, that's why I was asking that question. It's more prevalent.
And you know what I find even weirder is, I don't know about you, but when I watch TV shows or films at the moment and they hug each other or they shake hands, there's something in my body that goes, oh, what are they doing?
Exactly. That's where it's just all this verbiage out there, how to be safe. And I believe that we need to be safe. This is the first time we've experienced a pandemic. It's happened in the past, but it's something we want to be respectful for other people. And I still wear a mask. But I just thought it was weird that I was afraid in that moment to shake that man's hand. And he didn't, but because I'm like, oh, I'm all cool. Then I'm like, oh, it's all right, Bridget, go wash your hands later. And that's kind of what I did. And it was the first time I've gone to restaurants, but not like to go. I sat in, isn't that weird? I think just because I've had some health issues in the past, I've had my doctors tell me I need, maybe that was part of it, telling me I need to be safer. And so I have been, and maybe that's subconscious doctor telling me to be, reminding me to be safe.
Yeah, well, that's it. And a lot of the language around this whole pandemic even the word pandemic, all of this language triggers us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So even hearing words like social distancing, isolation, lockdown, it does create this kind of fear in us, and the stay safe message. I get it. Like, we've all got to look out for ourselves and others, but this language does trigger us, and it does create this fear as well.
right. And it's just a bit, like I said, if it's me feeling that way, I can just imagine teens who are going to be going back to, they're dealing with different hormonal issues already anyway. And maybe that's why I was thinking, maybe when I was younger, I would get really nervous. I didn't know if it was my hormones or not. You just don't know. And, but I think it was a lot to do with people pushing you up there because you're not ready. They're telling you back in the day, you got to be, just get up there and be brave. And you're just like, I'm not ready. And I don't know if it's good or bad.
No, yeah, it's a really good point, because, and this is what kept coming up for me when it came to my acting. I kept being told, just keep doing it and you'll get better, you'll get over these nerves. But I think there's a difference between, maybe you are in the headspace where you're nervous, but you feel like you can do it. And if you're put in that situation, then maybe for you, it's a really great chance for you to just step outside of your comfort zone and go for it. But if you are genuinely terrified and your mind is not cooperating and you're put in that situation, it can be very traumatic. And that's what happened to me. So rather than getting better and better, feeling more and more confident, I became more and more traumatized, more and more afraid, and more unwell, to the point where I thought, well, I can't do this. So that's why I'm really passionate about this, because I know that there are other people like me who are not ready, and it's this whole thing of, start before you're ready, and all of this language can be really confusing. But I know that when you're really feeling that afraid, that it's more being in an environment where you're not being supported and understood with that. If I was in that classroom and my teacher said, you're going to be okay, Rose, we know what you're going through, and other students in the class were talking about it, I had someone who was supporting me, great. But the fact was, I didn't feel that empathy from anyone around me, or that understanding, which meant that I felt like I had to hide what was going on because I couldn't expose it.
Right, you felt like a loser too, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Is that the right word?
I definitely felt like a loser.
Right.
I was desperate to be the cool kid, and I fell flat on my face.
Right. It's just amazing how those experiences that you're taking the takeaways from it to try to help other people. On your coaching, because of 2020, what happened? I'm assuming it's all on online calls, or is it mostly one-on-one and then some group calls, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so it's one-on-one at the moment, but I'm developing a group coaching program, and it's all online for the time being. I'd love to do lots of live stuff in person when I can, especially more speaking engagements that aren't virtual.
Right.
But for now, online has been great. I've met so many amazing people from all around the world, and yeah, I definitely feel it's hugely beneficial both for client and coach.
Right. And this tech, and that's the positive side. I'm like talking to you. You're in London and I'm in Atlanta. Right. And this would not have been possible to have this conversation on video without the technology that we're dealing with. So I always try to look at the good in the situation. That helps me get over things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there is good in it, and focusing on that is helpful for all of us. It's not that we disregard the other stuff. We definitely acknowledge it, and so we don't just block it out, but it is so important that we take the time to look at, well, what are the positives that we can take from this experience, just so we can keep ourselves feeling boosted and come out the other side feeling as good as we can.
And one thing I just thought of when we were saying that, when you are coaching, do you think people that are dealing more with social anxiety, are they focusing on the negative maybe of a situation?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much that they're kind of so sucked into this inner critic.
Yeah.
So this voice that's really telling them, you shouldn't do that. That's a mistake. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? It's this kind of inner dialogue that's just at full speed. So yeah, there's a lot of high expectations, a lot of perfectionism, and a lot of negative self-talk going on.
Right. When I was younger, I had perfectionism, and that you're dealing with that, then you're of the fear or afraid to do something and put it out there in public, right?
Yeah, because a lot of it is, and it's down to people pleasing. Perfectionism is really this need to please people, which comes from something. It comes from a story that happened in our past somewhere, and it's all about tracing back and finding out, well, what was that thing that's left me a people pleaser? Because we're not born people pleasers. We're not stuck with it forever. Something has happened that has made us feel like we need to please others, and perfectionism is a way of protecting ourselves so that we don't get judged.
That's true. I didn't like that. And I think you're right. You think about the childhood stuff you're dealing with, that I think can be in some shape or form. You don't know, but if you're digging deep, like what you're doing with the coaching, it'll help you get over it. And just like that doctor that told you about the social anxiety, you're like, oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to that doctor, because there are conversations around labels and whether labels, when it comes to mental health, are actually helpful or not, which is a whole other podcast conversation. But what's interesting for me is that having that label for me helped me make sense of what I was going through. So for me, it was very much a helpful thing. I didn't need to then marry myself to it and go, okay, well, I am social anxiety. But it was helpful for me to go, okay, I have a thing that is recognized, that is widely experienced, and I'm not alone. So,
and that is a great example of resilience, because you acknowledged it, and then you didn't just continue doing it. You found a way to adapt to it, or sit there and look at the positive.
Yeah, well, it was that moment when I realized if finding out that I've got social anxiety is enough to end my 5-year battle with depression, then I need to share my story. And that was really what motivated me to overcome my fear, because I thought, what's the most powerful way to me to share my story? It's to overcome my fear and share it and speak it. So that was really the motivating factor for me.
And then when we spoke previously, you said you like to write a lot too. That's therapeutic for me.
Writing. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off.
Okay, it's just something about get those words down on paper. You don't have to share it with the public, but it's just something about it is relieving for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, I love writing, and I just think it helps you get what's up here out of your head. And sometimes when you write things down, you see it for what it really is. If you can write down what are the things I'm saying to myself, and you write them down, you go, whoa, is that really what I'm saying to myself? It helps you see it for what it really is sometimes. What am I worrying about?
And why? It helps you figure out why, or get to the root cause, maybe.
Yeah. If you write down, what am I worrying about? Is this the truth? Do I need to be worrying about this? What's the worst that can happen? If we really look into it, we'll see, the more we dig and pull away the layers, that actually that worry is just a thought, a negative thought that we've run away with.
I think it's great what you're doing. You have a website, which I think is cool, and you're doing this and helping people, sharing your story to let them, they're not alone, and they're not, they shouldn't feel ashamed, because it was, in the past when I was younger, you wouldn't want to be talking about this. So it's really good what you're doing. Can you share where people can learn more about you?
Yeah, of course. So my website is myfriendfear.com, myfriendfear. I'm also on Instagram at myfriendfear. I'm on LinkedIn, Roseberry. And yeah, I'm on Facebook as well under Roseberry. And I've got, my friend Fear is kind of all around.
And what I'll do for those that are listening, when I summarize this, I will put the links in the summary. And Rose, I really appreciate your time, and it's very helpful. Even I just talking to you, like, I didn't realize I had some, the anxiety stuff from last week. It's like, whoa, just because of what we've been dealing with. But what you're doing is really, really helpful. And I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everybody.